The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles. Its crystal walls caught the light from 3 suns and threw rainbows across the floor. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in their assigned places. Each species had their own special chair made for their body type. Ambassador Chen Wei sat in the human section. The chair was simple metal and fabric, nothing fancy like the others. The Vexthani sat in chairs made of living crystal that sang when they moved. The ethereals floated in gas chambers that glowed with soft blue light. The hive clusters arranged themselves in perfect geometric patterns on raised platforms. Chen watched them all with quiet interest. She had been Earth's representative for 2 years now. In that time, she had learned many things about how the galaxy worked. Most of it made her want to smile. But she kept her face neutral and polite. The current speaker was High Coordinator Zethkul of the Vexthani Empire. His crystalline body reflected the chamber lights as he spoke in his musical voice. Chen's translation device turned his words into English. The matter before us today concerns territorial redistribution in the outer spiral sectors, Zethkul announced. The Ethereal Collective claims mining rights to the Kepler 442 system. However, our ancient treaties clearly state that crystal-bearing worlds fall under Vexithani jurisdiction. An ethereal representative rose from its gas chamber. Its form was barely visible, like smoke given shape. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind through caves. The Vexthani interpretation is flawed, the ethereal said. Our people discovered those worlds first. We have prior claim under the laws of initial contact. Chen listened to the back-and-forth arguments. She had heard similar debates many times. The galaxy had rules for everything. Rules for who could claim what planets. Rules for how to settle disputes. Rules for how to conduct war. That last one always made Chen's smile harder to hide. If diplomatic resolution fails, Zethkul continued, we propose a formal war of territorial redistribution. All parties may present their military credentials for evaluation. The hall buzzed with conversation. Representatives from smaller species whispered among themselves. Wars in the galaxy were serious business, but they followed strict protocols. Everyone knew how they worked. Chen raised her hand. The gesture activated her speaking rights. A soft chime sounded through the hall. The human delegation requests clarification, she said. Her voice carried clearly through the vast space. What exactly does a war of territorial redistribution involve? Several representatives turned to look at her. Chen could feel their attention like a physical weight. Humans were still new to galactic politics. Most species treated them like curious children. Zethkul's crystal form brightened slightly. Chen had learned this meant amusement. Of course, honored human representative. Your species is still learning our ways. His tone was patient, like a teacher explaining to a slow student. A formal war follows established protocols. First, all parties submit their military capabilities for review. This ensures balanced combat. Chen nodded and made notes on her datapad. I see. What happens next? The Council assigns neutral observers to monitor the conflict, and Ethereal added. Combat zones are clearly marked. Engagement schedules are distributed to all parties. No military action may occur outside designated time periods. There are honor codes to follow, said a representative from the hive clusters. Its insect-like mandibles clicked as it spoke. Single combat between ship commanders. Formal challenges. Acceptable casualty parameters. Chen continued taking notes. Acceptable casualty parameters? Naturally, Zethkul said. War should not cause excessive loss of life. We have evolved beyond such primitive brutality. Modern warfare is a test of skill and strategy, not a slaughter. Combat pauses every 7th day for rest and medical treatment, the Ethereal explained. Wounded personnel are exchanged under truce flags. Supply lines remain off limits except during approved raid windows. The more they explained, the harder it became for Chen to keep her expression neutral. She wrote down every detail they shared. Her training had taught her to gather intelligence whenever possible, but she had never imagined it would be this easy. How long do these wars typically last? She asked. The average territorial war lasts 18 to 24 months, Zethkul replied, though some have extended longer when particularly complex negotiations are required. And the winning conditions? First to achieve strategic objectives wins territorial claim, the hive cluster representative clicked. Usually involves capturing 3 key installations or eliminating 60% of enemy combat vessels. Chen nodded thoughtfully. What role would newer species play in such conflicts? The hall fell quiet for a moment. Chen could sense the representatives exchanging glances. Finally, Zethkul spoke. Newer species typically observe and learn, perhaps provide minor support roles. Humanity would be assigned to medical supply duties or communications relay. Nothing dangerous for such an inexperienced military. We understand humans have limited combat experience, the ethereal added. Your species has only recently achieved interstellar travel. It would be inappropriate to expose you to serious warfare. Chen smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but something about it made the nearby representatives shift uncomfortably. They could not say why. We appreciate the consideration, Chen said, though I should mention that humanity has some experience with conflict resolution. Oh? Zethkul's crystal body dimmed slightly. What sort of experience? Chen looked down at her notes. Nothing as sophisticated as your methods, of course. We had some territorial disputes on our homeworld. Took us several thousand years to work through them. She did not mention that those territorial disputes had produced weapons capable of turning entire continents into glass, or that humans had fought wars involving hundreds of millions of casualties, or that her own species had spent most of its history perfecting increasingly efficient ways to kill each other. Primitive conflicts, no doubt, Zethkul said dismissively, but do not worry. You will learn proper warfare from us. Every species does eventually. I'm sure we will, Chen replied. Her smile grew slightly wider. The formal vote was called. All major powers agreed to the war of territorial redistribution. Combat would begin in 3 months after all preparations were complete. The Ethereals and Vexithani would lead opposing sides. Smaller species would choose their allegiances. As the session ended, representatives began filing out of the hall. Chen remained in her seat, still taking notes. She reviewed everything they had told her about galactic warfare. The rules, the limitations, the predictable patterns. Her communication device chirped. A message from Earth Command was waiting. Chen activated the secure channel. Ambassador Chen reporting, she said quietly. Status report, came the reply. The voice belonged to General Harrison, head of Earth's military intelligence. They've agreed to a formal war, Chen said. I have detailed information about their combat protocols. Excellent. How long until it begins? 3 months. They want humanity to play a support role. There was a pause. Then General Harrison spoke again. Chen could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Perfect. Send us everything. Time to show them what human warfare really looks like. Chen closed the channel and gathered her materials. As she walked through the empty hall, her smile finally broke free. It was the smile of someone who had just been handed exactly what they wanted. The galaxy was about to learn that not every species had evolved beyond their predatory nature. Some had simply learned to hide it better. 3 months later, the war began exactly as planned. The Vexthani and Ethereal fleets met at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Both sides followed protocol perfectly. They broadcast formal declarations of hostility. They established combat zones. They even exchanged preliminary sensor data, so neither side would have unfair advantages. Captain Sarah Martinez watched the alien formations from the bridge of her destroyer, the UES Wolverine. Her ship was part of the human support fleet, positioned safely behind the main battle lines. At least that was what the aliens thought. Status report, she ordered. Alien fleets are maintaining standard engagement distance. Her tactical officer replied. 12 million kilometers apart. Both sides are broadcasting challenges for single combat. Sarah nodded. She had spent months studying galactic warfare. It was like watching children play with expensive toys. Everything was formal and polite and completely predictable. Communications, patch me through to the fleet, she said. Channel open, Captain. Sarah keyed her microphone. All ships, this is Wolverine. Execute Shadow Protocol. Radio silence from this point forward. Across human space, 27 ships acknowledged the order and went dark. They stopped broadcasting identification signals. They shut down non-essential systems. They became ghosts in the void. The alien fleets continued their formal dance. A Vexthani cruiser challenged an ethereal battleship to honorable combat. Both vessels moved to the designated dueling zone. They circled each other at precisely 10,000 kilometers, firing carefully aimed shots at non-critical systems. Sarah watched the display with growing amusement. The aliens were trying to disable each other, not destroy. They followed rules that had been written thousands of years ago by species that had forgotten what real war looked like. Tactical? Target their supply convoy, she ordered quietly. "Ma'am, the supply convoy is clearly marked as non-combatant," her tactical officer replied. "Galactic law protects support vessels during formal engagements." Sarah's smile was sharp. "We never signed those laws." The human fleet moved like shadows through space. They used no active sensors. They communicated through quantum-encrypted burst transmissions. They approached their targets from the system's outer edge, where no one expected threats. The ethereal supply convoy consisted of 5 massive cargo vessels and 2 escort frigates. They hung motionless in space, waiting for the formal combat to end so they could provide supplies and medical aid. Their crews were probably playing games or reading to pass the time. Sarah's ships surrounded the convoy without being detected. It was embarrassingly easy. The aliens had grown lazy over millennia of ritualized warfare. "All ships fire," Sarah commanded. The human destroyers opened fire simultaneously. They used kinetic rounds, not energy weapons. The metal slugs moved at significant fractions of light speed. They hit the alien ships before any warning could be sent. The results were devastating. 3 cargo vessels simply disappeared in brilliant flashes. The escort frigates managed to raise shields, but human weapons punched through them like paper. Within 30 seconds, the entire convoy was debris. Across the battlefield, alarms began sounding. The formal duel stopped as both alien fleets tried to understand what had happened. Their supply convoy had been there one moment and gone the next. "Unknown vessels detected," the Vexthani commander broadcast on all frequencies. "Identify yourselves immediately." Sarah ignored the transmission. Her fleet was already moving toward their next target. The aliens had helpfully provided detailed battle plans during the pre-war negotiations. Every ship position, every supply route, every communications relay was marked on Sarah's tactical display. The human ship struck again 20 minutes later. This time they hit a Vexthani sensor station that was monitoring the combat zone. The station's crystal matrices shattered under kinetic bombardment. Its crew never had time to send a distress signal. Panic began spreading through both alien fleets. Ships started breaking formation, trying to protect their support vessels. The careful order of galactic warfare began falling apart. "This is High Coordinator Zethkul," came an angry transmission. "Unknown attackers are violating all laws of civilized combat. We demand immediate identification and surrender." Sarah finally opened a channel. "This is Captain Martinez of the human fleet. We received no instructions about surrender procedures." The silence that followed was almost amusing. Sarah could imagine the alien commanders frantically checking their databases. Humans were supposed to be in support roles. They were supposed to observe and learn, not attack. "Captain Martinez," Zethkul's voice returned, strained with confusion. "Your species was assigned medical supply duties. You are not authorized for combat operations." "Funny thing about that," Sarah replied. "We never actually agreed to those assignments. Your people assumed we would accept them." Another long pause. When the ethereal commander spoke, its voice carried notes of growing alarm. "Human vessel, you are engaging in illegal attacks on non-combatant targets. This violates every principle of civilized warfare." Sarah laughed. The sound carried clearly over the comm channel. "Civilized warfare? That's like saying organized chaos or military intelligence, and pick one or the other." The human fleet struck again. This time they hit both sides simultaneously. A Vexthani communications relay went dark, just as an ethereal fuel depot exploded. The aliens realized they were facing an enemy that did not care about their rules. "All ships, emergency protocols," Zethkul ordered. "Form defensive perimeters around critical assets." But the humans had already vanished. They used the system's asteroid belt for cover, hiding among the rocks like predators in tall grass. Their ships were painted matte black and covered with sensor-absorbing materials. They had been designed for this kind of warfare. The alien fleet spent the next 6 hours searching for targets that refused to be found. Every time they thought they had located the human ships, their enemies disappeared again. It was like fighting shadows. Then the real attacks began. Human ships emerged from the asteroid belt in coordinated strikes. They hit fuel depots, ammunition stores, and repair facilities. They targeted the support infrastructure that kept the alien fleets operational, and they did it all while completely ignoring the rules of engagement. "This is barbaric," the ethereal commander transmitted. "You are destroying civilian contractors and medical facilities." "Those facilities were supporting your war effort," Sarah replied calmly. "That makes them legitimate military targets, but they are clearly marked as non-combatants under Galactic Convention 12. Earth never signed Galactic Convention 12. The aliens were learning a hard truth about human warfare. Humans did not fight to prove their honor or test their skills. They fought to win. Everything else was just details. By the end of the first day, both alien fleets were in disarray. Their careful battle plans meant nothing when their enemy refused to follow the script. Ships that had expected formal duels found themselves under attack by invisible enemies who struck without warning. Sarah sat in her command chair, watching the tactical display. Red markers showed destroyed alien assets. Blue markers showed human ship positions. The battle was going exactly as planned. "Status report," she ordered. "Enemy forces have lost 40% of their support infrastructure," her tactical officer reported. "They're attempting to consolidate around their capital ships." "Let them," Sarah said. "Makes them easier targets." She opened a channel to Earth Command. "This is Wolverine reporting. Phase 1 complete. The aliens are starting to understand they're not playing their usual game." "Excellent work, Captain," came the reply. "Phase 2 begins tomorrow. Show them what happens when humans stop playing nice." Sarah closed the channel and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien commanders were trying to figure out how to fight an enemy that did not follow their rules. They were about to learn that humans had been studying their weaknesses for much longer than anyone realized. The galaxy had wanted a war. Now they were getting one. 2 weeks into the war, everything had changed. The careful rules that had governed galactic conflicts for thousands of years lay in ruins. Both alien fleets were desperate, confused, and running low on supplies. Lieutenant Commander Rosa Delgado floated in the docking bay of her assault ship, checking her equipment one final time. Around her, 30 human Marines prepared for what the aliens would soon learn was called a boarding action. It was a concept that did not exist in their civilized warfare. "Listen up," Rosa announced to her team. "Our target is the Hive Cluster Dreadnought Eternal Swarm. Intelligence says it's carrying their sector command staff and fleet coordination systems." Marine Sergeant Jackson raised his hand. "Ma'am, the aliens have been broadcasting surrender offers for 3 days. Why aren't we accepting?" Rosa smiled inside her helmet. "Because they're not offering real surrender. They want to negotiate terms and maintain honor. We want them to understand what defeat actually means." The human assault ships approached the Eternal Swarm without announcing their intentions. In galactic warfare, boarding actions were forbidden. Ship-to-ship combat was conducted at long range with formal challenges. The idea of physically entering an enemy vessel was considered barbaric. Rosa's tactical display showed the target ahead. The Hive Cluster Dreadnought was enormous, built like a mobile city. Its hull crawled with geometric patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. But human engineers had studied those patterns for months. They knew exactly where the weak points were. "Breach charges ready," her demolitions expert reported. "Target locks confirmed," added the pilot. Rosa watched the alien ship grow larger on her screen. She could see its weapon systems tracking her approach, but they were not firing. The Hive clusters were still trying to establish communication and arrange formal combat protocols. "Execute breach," Rosa ordered. Her ship fired shaped charges at 6 specific points on the alien hull. The explosions carved precise holes through meters of exotic armor. Before the Hive clusters could react, assault pods launched from the human ships and rammed directly into the breaches. Rosa felt the impact as her pod punched through the alien hull. Emergency systems screamed warnings as atmosphere vented into space. Then her pod's airlock cycled and she was inside the enemy ship. The Eternal Swarm's interior was a maze of hexagonal corridors and vertical shafts. Everything was built for insect-like beings who could walk on walls and ceilings. Rosa's team adapted quickly, using magnetic boots and grappling hooks to navigate the alien environment. "Contact front," Jackson reported over the comm. Hive cluster warriors appeared around a corner. They moved in perfect formation, their chitinous armor gleaming under the ship's bioluminescent lighting. Rosa had studied their combat doctrine. They would demand formal challenges and single combat between champions. Instead, her Marines opened fire with automatic weapons. The aliens were completely unprepared for coordinated small-unit tactics. Their warriors were trained for honorable duels, not sustained firefights. Rosa's team advanced through the ship using suppressive fire, flanking maneuvers, and explosive breaching charges. "This is Subcommander Zixthul," came a transmission through Rosa's universal translator. "Human forces, You are violating the sacred codes of ship honor. Withdraw immediately for proper challenge protocols. Rosa keyed her comm while tossing a grenade around a corner. Sub-Commander, this is Lieutenant Commander Delgado. We're not here for challenges. We're here to take your ship. The explosion echoed through the corridor. When the smoke cleared, Rosa's team moved forward over the debris of what had been a hive cluster defensive position. Impossible, Zixthal transmitted. Ship capture is forbidden under all galactic law. Combat ends when command staff surrenders or withdraws. Earth never signed those laws, Rosa replied, repeating what had become humanity's standard response. Her team reached the ship's central command center 40 minutes later. They had fought through 12 decks of confused alien resistance. The hive clusters kept trying to establish formal dueling, protocols even as human weapons tore through their formations. The command center doors were sealed with biomechanical locks that recognized only hive cluster genetic signatures. Rosa's demolitions expert planted charges that turned the doors into scrap metal. Inside, the ship's command staff waited in perfect formation. They wore ceremonial armor and carried ritual weapons. Sub-Commander Zixthal stood at the center, his mandibles clicking in formal challenge patterns. I offer single combat for control of this vessel, he announced. Choose your champion. Rosa walked up to him and shot him with her sidearm. The sub-commander collapsed, his compound eyes staring in shock as his life leaked away. I choose everyone, Rosa said. The remaining hive cluster officers tried to process what had happened. In their entire military history, command staff had never been directly attacked. Wars were fought by champions and specialists while leaders watched from safety. Surrender the ship, Rosa ordered, pointing her weapon at the next highest-ranking officer. But the honor codes, and the alien stammered. Your choice, Rosa said. Surrender or die. The hive cluster officer's hands shook as he activated the ship's surrender protocols. Throughout the Eternal Swarm, defensive systems shut down, damage control teams stopped working. The massive dreadnought became a helpless hulk drifting in space. Rosa's Marines secured the command center while her technical team began downloading the ship's databases. Everything was there. Fleet positions, supply routes, communication codes, strategic plans. The aliens had never imagined that their enemies might simply steal their information. Wolverine, this is boarding Team Alpha, Rosa reported to Captain Martinez. Target secured. Downloading intel package now. Outstanding work, Rosa. What's the status of the command staff? Rosa looked around the command center. Half the alien officers were dead. The others sat in stunned silence, trying to understand how their perfect military system had collapsed so quickly. Command staff neutralized. Some survivors for interrogation. Excellent. Pack up and move to your next target. Rosa's team spent 20 minutes copying every piece of data they could find. Then they set demolition charges throughout the ship's critical systems and departed. The Eternal Swarm would never fight again. As her assault ship pulled away, Rosa watched the hive cluster dreadnought through the viewport. It was still intact but completely dead. Its crew was trapped inside with no working systems and rapidly depleting life support. Ma'am, Sergeant Jackson asked, shouldn't we rescue the survivors? Rosa checked her mission orders. Negative. Let them think about why their honor codes didn't protect them. Across the battlefield, human forces were conducting similar operations. Boarding parties seized control of critical alien vessels. Sabotage teams destroyed infrastructure that the aliens thought was protected by law. Electronic warfare specialists jammed communications and corrupted navigation systems. The galaxies established, powers found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow any rules except the most basic one: win or lose. There were no honor codes in human warfare, no protected targets, no sacred protocols. Captain Martinez received Rosa's after-action report while planning the next phase of operations. The intelligence gathered from the hive cluster ship was already being distributed to other human commanders. Tactical. What's our current assessment? Martinez asked. Enemy forces have lost cohesion, her tactical officer replied. They're trying to withdraw to defendable positions, but they don't understand our operational tempo. Martinez nodded. The aliens were still thinking in terms of their traditional warfare. Formal engagements with rest periods and negotiated truces. They had not adapted to human methods. Communications, patch me through to Earth Command. Channel open, Captain. Command, this is Martinez. Phase 2 complete. Enemy forces are beginning to understand they're not fighting their usual war. Copy that, Captain. How are they adapting? Martinez looked at her tactical display. Alien ships were broadcasting continuous surrender offers. ceasefire requests and demands for formal negotiations. None of them seemed to understand that humans were not interested in their traditional solutions. They're not adapting, Command. They're breaking. Good. Phase 3 is authorized. Show them what happens when humans decide to end a war. Martinez closed the channel and turned to her crew. Around her, human ships moved through space like hunting wolves. They struck without warning, vanished without trace, and left only confusion in their wake. The galaxy had wanted to teach humanity about civilized warfare. Instead, they were learning what war looked like when civilization was just another word for weakness. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives from every major power sat in the Great Crystal Hall, but the usual ceremony was gone. Fear had replaced formality. Desperation had replaced diplomatic protocol. High Coordinator Zethkul's crystal form flickered with stress patterns that his species had not shown in millennia. Around him, other representatives showed similar signs of strain. The ethereal's gas form swirled with agitated colors. The hive clusters clicked their mandibles into stress patterns. At the center of it all sat Ambassador Chen Wei, calm and patient as always. Her small smile had become a source of terror for the other delegates. The human threat must be contained, Zethkul announced. Their forces have violated every principle of civilized warfare. They attack non-combatants, ignore surrender protocols, and show no respect for established law. Chen raised her hand for speaking privileges. The hall fell silent. The human delegation objects to the characterization of our forces as a threat, she said pleasantly. We are simply participating in the war that this council authorized. Your participation exceeds all acceptable parameters, the ethereal representative hissed. You have destroyed medical facilities, captured command personnel, and refused all attempts at negotiation. Chen consulted her datapad. I have the original war authorization here. It mentions territorial redistribution through military action. I see no restrictions on methods or targets. The alien representatives exchanged glances. They had written those authorizations assuming that humans would follow galactic tradition. The idea that someone might ignore thousands of years of military custom had never occurred to them. The restrictions are implied by common decency, Zethkul said desperately. No civilized species would interpret military authorization so broadly. Chen's smile widened slightly. Perhaps that's the problem. You assumed we were civilized. General Marcus Thompson walked into the Earth Defense Force Situation Room carrying a cup of coffee and the day's intelligence reports. Around him, staff officers coordinated humanity's response to what their enemies still thought was a limited territorial dispute. Status report, Thompson ordered. Alien forces are attempting to form a unified defense, his chief of staff replied. Intelligence indicates they're planning a coordinated strike against our forward positions. Thompson sipped his coffee and studied the tactical displays. Red markers showed alien fleet concentrations throughout human space. The numbers looked impressive until you understood what the markers really represented. How many of those ships are actually combat effective? He asked. Approximately 30%, sir. Our electronic warfare teams have compromised most of their navigation and communication systems. Thompson nodded. That was the beauty of fighting enemies who had grown dependent on technology they no longer understood. Galactic civilization had become so comfortable with their advanced systems that they had forgotten how vulnerable those systems could be. What about their alliance coordination? Falling apart, sir. Each species is trying to protect their own assets. They can't agree on unified command structure or strategic priorities. Thompson was not surprised. The galaxy's major powers had spent millennia as rivals, cooperating only when it served their individual interests. The idea of true alliance was foreign to them. Sir, his intelligence officer interrupted. We're receiving reports from our deep cover operatives. Thompson turned to the communications station. For 2 years, human diplomats and traders had been establishing contacts throughout galactic civilization. The aliens had welcomed them as harmless newcomers seeking to learn galactic ways. Report, Thompson ordered. Agent Patel reports that Vexithani Fleet Command is requesting emergency reinforcements from their core worlds. Agent Kim confirms that ethereal leadership is considering withdrawal from contested territories. Agent Rodriguez indicates that 3 minor species are attempting to negotiate separate peace agreements. Thompson smiled. The aliens were discovering that their new human friends had been very good listeners. Every conversation, every shared meal, every cultural exchange had been quietly cataloged and analyzed. Activate sleeper protocols, Thompson ordered. Across the galaxy, humans who had spent months or years building relationships with alien governments received coded messages. Within hours, critical infrastructure began failing throughout alien space. Power grids developed mysterious glitches. Communication networks suffered widespread outages. Transportation systems experienced sudden mechanical failures. Nothing that could be traced directly to sabotage, but enough to cripple the aliens' ability to coordinate their response. On the Vexthani homeworld, engineer Sarah Kim worked in the Central Power Distribution Facility. She had volunteered for a cultural exchange program 18 months earlier. Her alien colleagues trusted her completely. She waited until the shift change, then accessed the power grid's control systems. Human intelligence had provided her with exactly the right access codes. Within minutes, she had introduced subtle modifications to the grid's operating parameters. The changes would not cause immediate failures. Instead, they would create cascading problems over the next several days. Power surges, brownouts, and equipment failures that would paralyze the Vexthani war effort without obviously being attacks. Similar operations occurred throughout alien space. Humans who had been welcomed as students and friends revealed their true purpose. Not as conquerors, but as preparation for conquest. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, the emergency session continued. Alien representatives proposed increasingly desperate solutions to the human problem. "We must unite our fleets," urged the Hive Cluster representative. "Present overwhelming force to make the humans see reason." "Our fleets cannot coordinate effectively," Zethkul replied with frustration. "Human interference has disrupted our command and control systems." Chen listened with apparent interest. Perhaps a negotiated settlement would be preferable. Earth is always willing to discuss reasonable terms. The hall erupted in angry clicks, hisses, and harmonic vibrations. The idea that the newest galactic species would dictate terms to ancient powers was unthinkable. "What terms could you possibly offer?" the ethereal demanded. Chen consulted her datapad again. "Complete withdrawal of all non-human forces from the disputed territories. Formal recognition of human territorial claims. Reparations for damages inflicted on human shipping during the conflict." The silence that followed was complete. Chen's terms were not negotiations. They were surrender demands. "Impossible," Zethkul finally managed. "We outnumber you 1,000 to 1. Your fleet consists of fewer than 100 ships." Chen's smile became truly predatory. "High Coordinator, you're thinking like prey. You see numbers and assume they matter. You see formal fleets and think they represent our total capabilities." She activated a holographic display that showed the current tactical situation. Red markers indicated alien military assets. Blue markers showed known human positions. But as the display updated, new markers appeared. "Thousands of them. You've been cataloging our obvious military vessels," Chen explained. "But you never asked about our civilian shipping. Our merchant fleet. Our industrial platforms. Our research vessels." The alien representative stared at the display in growing horror. Human ships were everywhere, hidden in asteroid belts, disguised as cargo haulers, masquerading as scientific expeditions. The galaxy was full of human assets that had been overlooked because they did not fit traditional military categories. "Every human ship can be a warship when necessary," Chen continued. "Every civilian is a potential soldier. Every trade mission is a reconnaissance operation. We don't separate our military from our society, because war is part of who we are." Zethkul's crystal form dimmed to almost nothing. "What are you?" Chen stood up from her simple metal chair. Around her, the elaborate seating of the galactic powers suddenly looked like the toys of children playing at being adults. "We're what you used to be, before you decided that warfare should be civilized. We're predators, High Coordinator, and you've just discovered that you're prey." The emergency session dissolved as representatives rushed to contact their home governments. Chen remained in the hall, making notes and sending reports to Earth Command. The galaxy's ancient powers were finally beginning to understand what they faced. Not another civilized species with formal military traditions, but something older and more dangerous, something that had never stopped hunting. Thompson received Chen's report while planning the final phase of human operations. The aliens were mobilizing everything they had, but it was too late. Human preparation had been too thorough, and galactic civilization had become too dependent on systems that humans now controlled. "Sir," his communications officer announced, We're receiving surrender offers from 17 minor species. Accept them, Thompson ordered. But make it clear that surrender means acceptance of human authority. The war was nearly over, not because humans had superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but because they understood something the galaxy had forgotten. War was not a game with rules and honor codes. War was about survival, and humans had spent their entire evolutionary history learning how to survive. Soon the galaxy would understand that as well. 1 year after the war began, Ambassador Chen Wei stood before a very different galactic council. The Crystal Hall remained the same, but everything else had changed. Where once dozens of species had sat as equals, now human observers occupied most of the seats. The surviving alien representatives looked smaller somehow. Their elaborate chairs seemed like monuments to a dead civilization. Fear had replaced their ancient arrogance. Submission had replaced their diplomatic pride. Chen walked to the center of the hall. She no longer sat in the human section. She stood where the council's presiding officer had once conducted business. The change in positions told the story of the past year more clearly than any words could. The council will address the final terms of galactic reorganization, Chen announced. Her voice carried easily through the vast space, no longer needing translation devices or formal protocols. High Coordinator Zethkul's crystal form was dim and cracked. The proud leader of the Vexthani Empire now spoke in barely audible whispers. The Vexthani formally accept human authority over our territories, he managed. We request only that our people be allowed to maintain their cultural practices. Chen made a note on her datapad. Granted, provided those practices do not conflict with human administrative requirements. The ethereal representative spoke next. Its gaseous form had lost much of its color, appearing almost transparent. The ethereal collective submits to human jurisdiction. We ask for protection from those who might seek revenge for our past conflicts. The human government will provide security for all cooperative species, Chen replied. Cooperation being defined as complete compliance with human directives. One by one, the remaining representatives offered their surrender. The hive clusters, the silicon mines, the void dancers, and dozens of smaller species. Each submission was recorded and filed for future reference. The process took 3 hours. When it was finished, Chen looked around the hall at the assembled aliens. These beings had once commanded star fleets and ruled solar systems. Now they waited for permission to speak. You're probably wondering how this happened so quickly, Chen said. How a species you considered primitive managed to defeat your combined forces in less than a year. Several alien representatives shifted nervously. They had indeed been wondering exactly that. The answer is simple, Chen continued. You forgot what war actually is. You turned it into a game with rules and ceremonies. You made it safe and predictable and honorable. She activated a holographic display that showed the war's progression. Blue markers spread across the galaxy like an infection. Overwhelming red markers with ruthless efficiency. Humans never forgot that war is about survival, about using every advantage, every weapon, every trick you can find, about winning by any means necessary because losing means death. Chen paused to let that sink in. The aliens had thought they were engaging in a limited territorial dispute. Humans had understood it as a fight for dominance of the entire galaxy. You also made another mistake, Chen added. You assumed that because we were new to galactic civilization, we were naive about how it worked. The display changed to show human intelligence networks. Lines connected human agents to alien governments, alien military installations, alien industrial centers. The web of connections covered every major world in the galaxy. We've been studying you since first contact. Every cultural exchange was reconnaissance. Every trade agreement was intelligence gathering. Every diplomatic meeting was an opportunity to learn your weaknesses. Zethkul found his voice. How long? How long have you been planning this? Chen smiled. It was the same small smile that had made aliens uncomfortable for 2 years. Now they understood why. Since the day we met you. The moment we learned that galactic civilization had rules for warfare, we began planning to break them. In the Earth Defense Force headquarters, General Thompson reviewed the final reports from across human space. The transformation had been remarkably smooth. Most alien populations had accepted human authority without resistance once their government surrendered. Status report, Thompson ordered. Integration proceeding on schedule, his chief of staff replied. Former alien military units are being reorganized under human command. Industrial facilities are being converted to human specifications. Educational systems are being updated with human curriculum. Thompson nodded. The aliens were learning that human rule was not particularly harsh as long as they cooperated. Those who did face no persecution or punishment. Those who resisted simply disappeared. What about the resistance movements? Minimal and disorganized. Most alien species lack the cultural background for effective guerrilla warfare. They're used to formal military structures and clear chains of command. That was another advantage humans had not expected. Species that had evolved beyond their predatory instincts had also lost the ability to conduct irregular warfare. They did not know how to fight from the shadows or organize underground movements. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we have a priority message from the colonial administration." Thompson turned to the screen. A human face appeared, speaking from one of the newly occupied alien worlds. "General, this is Administrator Jackson reporting from the former Vexithani capital. The local population is requesting permission to rename their primary city in honor of humanity's victory." Thompson almost smiled. The speed with which some aliens had embraced their new status was remarkable. Fear was a powerful motivator, but so was the desire to be on the winning side. "Permission granted," Thompson replied. "What name do they propose?" "New Terra, sir. They want to demonstrate their loyalty to human leadership." The irony was perfect. The proud Vexithani Empire, which had ruled this sector for thousands of years, was now so eager to please their conquerors that they would erase their own history. Back in the council chamber, Chen was concluding her address to the assembled representatives. "The age of galactic democracy is over," she announced. "Multiple species with conflicting interests can no longer govern effectively. Humanity will provide the unity and direction that the galaxy requires." An aide approached and whispered something in Chen's ear. She nodded and turned back to the assembled aliens. "I have just received word that the last holdout worlds have surrendered. The Spiral Confederation has formally requested human protection from their former allies. The galactic transition is complete." The hall fell silent. In less than 1 year, humanity had gone from junior partner to absolute ruler of galactic civilization. It was a transformation that should have taken centuries if it was possible at all. "You will return to your worlds and begin implementing human administrative systems," Chen continued. "Detailed instructions will be provided to your governments. Compliance is not optional." As the representatives filed out of the hall, Chen remained behind to review her notes. The formal ceremonies were finished, but the real work was just beginning. An entire galaxy needed to be reorganized under human authority. Her communication device chimed. A message from Earth was waiting. "Ambassador Chen reporting," she said. "Outstanding work, Ambassador," came the reply. It was the voice of the President of Earth. "The transition exceeded all our expectations." "Thank you, Madam President, though I should note that the aliens made it easier than anticipated. Their civilization had become so rigid that it couldn't adapt to asymmetric warfare." "Any concerns about long-term stability?" Chen looked around the empty hall. Sunlight streaming through the crystal walls painted rainbow patterns on the floor. It was beautiful and peaceful and completely under human control. "None whatsoever. The alien species are adapting to human authority better than our most optimistic projections. Fear is an excellent teacher." "Excellent. Begin Phase 4 implementation. It's time to expand beyond this galaxy." Chen closed the channel and gathered her materials. As she walked through the empty hall, her smile finally broke free completely. It was the smile of a predator that had successfully hunted an entire galaxy. Outside the council building, human children played in the plaza while their parents conducted the business of galactic administration. The children's laughter echoed off the crystal walls, a sound that the building had never heard before. In human schools across the galaxy, teachers began the first lessons in interspecies relations. The textbooks were already being written, telling the story of humanity's rise to galactic dominance. The official version was diplomatic and neutral, focusing on cultural exchange and peaceful integration. But the children's version was more honest. It told the story of the day the galaxy went to war and learned that some species had never stopped being predators. It explained how humans had smiled and been patient while they studied their prey. It described how quickly civilized behavior disappeared when faced with truly uncivilized enemies. The lesson was simple. In a galaxy full of sheep, wolves will always find a way to hunt, and humanity had never stopped being wolves. They had simply learned to smile while they chose their targets.